Hello, and welcome to today's Criterion Learning Series presentation. My name is Steve Tompkins, Principal Solutions Architect with Criterion. Today, I will be discussing notifications within Criterion HCM. So let's go ahead and get started. So I switch over to my browser. I do want to remind everyone that we do have a chat and a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them there, and we will try to answer them as we can during the webinar today. If there is anything that we cannot answer today, we will follow up with you with an email, perhaps a call, depending on what the severity and stuff like that. So please use that if you have any questions. Now, this is one of those areas where notifications are very prominent here in self-service, and of course, they're also on mobile and email and text messaging. So that's what we're talking about here is, as you can see, notifications over here on the right. And how do you deal with those as an employee, but also how you configure these things. And before I go into the settings where we normally spend a lot of our time, I do want to point out the preferences that are available under the quick menu over here. So when you go to this quick action menu, you'll see preferences, and you will have the option to set up a phone number for yourself. And this will allow you to get SMS notifications as you see fit. So if you do have a phone number in your, and this is for the individual employees, if you do have a phone number in your demographics on the phone number screen, you can go ahead and select the mobile number you want to use, send a code, which will send a 6-digit code to your phone, and then you'll verify whatever that code was. It will be a random code. I'm sure people have seen this before with things like banks and so forth when you're verifying your phone number. So this will allow you to verify that number. And then, of course, that means that we're then set up to do SMS. It's a little bit of security to make sure we're not just texting random phone numbers that may be wrong. We want to make sure the phone number was correct before we enable that. All right, so I do want to point that out right there. While we're on the screen, I do want to talk about this just very, very quickly. We'll get into this when you do the year end as well. But this is where the setting is if somebody would like to get paperless delivery for their tax forms. So you can see right here, things like the W-2 can be delivered electronically, the ACA forms. What that means is the system won't print out a paper copy. They'll be able to download that through self-service, and of course, maybe email. So they could get a notification about it. That's where it kind of ties back in, but it's also just right here on this preference screen, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. All right, and then of course you've got your notifications over here on the right, and what shows up here, of course, depends on the configuration, which we'll get to here in a minute, but you'll see different things. For an example, when I made this posting here, I did have a notification letting me know that there's a new post in announcements, and this also could go to my mobile. So if you do have the Criterion Go app and you've opted into notifications, which is a standard thing you would have to do with all apps on phones, is you have to opt in for notifications. There is no extra step, like I just mentioned with text messaging, but it does need to be turned on in the app. And of course, that could be configured within your mobile OS. So an iOS or an Android, you could turn on or off notifications there. So if you have Criterion Go enabled and you're not seeing notifications, it's possible at some time the system asked you, do you want to see notifications? And you said no. And so they're not allowed, but it doesn't mean that we did anything wrong or you do anything wrong in the system. It just means that on your individual phone, it's disabled, and you could go into your settings on your phone to enable them if you need to. All right. So here you'll see different things. If I'm done reading a message, very simple, hit that little check mark and it will go away. You'll see here, it tells you the total. You probably won't have 430, but it's possible you're gonna have quite a few you wanted to get rid of, especially if you're an admin, a manager. Maybe you have tried all the notifications turned on and you just have a ton of them out there. They will be here. Now this widget here is not something that the user enables. So this is something that we would turn on in the settings. I'll show you where you turn on that widget. The user really doesn't have any option to have this widget here. They can minimize it like this, but they cannot remove this here. It's either on or it's off for everybody. And I'll show you that here in a moment. But this is how you clear out existing ones. Still see various ones like a compensation round has started and performance review is due. And you can just check the box here. It isn't a box here when there's something like an anniversary or birthday, it's the little stars, but you'll see a little gift there for birthdays, but you just check that to clear them out. And obviously you could go down here to go to different pages. We show 5 at a time. You can go to the end, clear those types of things out if you need to do that. So very easy to do that there. If you do have many like I do, unfortunately you got to kind of go through and clean them out. Got to maybe just sit here with a cup of coffee and you just check them off like this or something. Hopefully you don't have as many as I do when you go into the system, but certainly it's possible. Anyways, let's go into the settings and we'll talk about first off where you enable that widget if it's not already turned on. And then also we'll go into the configuration of the actual notification. So I'll go into my settings here. It doesn't matter HR, payroll, recruiting, etc. As long as I have the gear in the top right here, I can get into my settings. Now, you of course need to be an administrator with the right security to get to this. So if you're not seeing the settings I'm talking about, then you'll need to find out who in your company has that ability to edit those things, or maybe you need to reach out to support and get some help with enabling that, or enabling the rights to be able to turn that on, because perhaps you should have them and you don't, and nobody internally knows what to do. We could help you out with that security profile. That's another topic for another day, but let me talk first off about how do you enable that widget. It's right here under system configuration. I just scroll down a little bit, you'll see ESS widgets. And here's the notification one. So this is done by employer. If it is not turned on in self-service and you want it turned on in self-service, as long as you have access to this, you can enable or disable this widget right there. So that would enable or disable this right there. All right, so that's how that would get turned on if you need to turn that on there. Now let's look at the actual notifications themselves. I do want to point out, if you're not sure where things are, and I know I do go a little bit quickly here, the filter up here, you can type in what you're looking for. So as an example, NOT is going to get me notifications. So that search is very nice. If you're not exactly sure where something is located, you might think, oh, it kind of makes sense. It's under HR, or you're not finding it or whatever. Just type in what you think it's called, and we'll find it for you and help you with that. So we're going to do a couple things. First, we're going to look at notifications, and then we're going to look at the layouts. The notifications is where we enable or disable the notifications. All right, and again, this is something that is done per employer. They are grouped up. We try to group them up kind of, logically by what they are. And then you'll see here you have different toggles to turn them on. First off, if it's not active, it doesn't matter what you have checked over here, it will not be enabled for anything, any email, SMS, ESS, or push. So let's say, as an example, you're not using this AppSync timesheet because you're doing timesheets in our system. You're not syncing them out to, another system, and you want to turn this off. You'll see here now I can't touch these other controls because they're disabled, and so that's how that works. Very easy just to toggle on and off. All right. Once you toggle it on, you'll see email, SMS, ESS, and push. Push is mobile. All right, so you can turn them on very easily like this. All right, so the orange is on and the gray is off, so you can kind of see how that works there. Now, there are literally hundreds of them. I'm not going to go through every single one of them. As you can see, there are so many that I could spend hours talking about each one of them. But I did want to talk about, let's say you are not currently using certifications and you're going to want to start using them and you want to enable them. So it's possible these are all off right now because you're not using it and nobody ever turned it on, and maybe you came through and you turned off everything you're never going to be using in the system. Now you decided you do want to use it. You could turn them all on by hitting this on button here. So anytime there's more than one toggle in a group, you're going to see the on or off right here. So this will turn them all on. And then if I decide, I want these to go out via email and via push, maybe I'm not doing SMS, then that turns all of them on or all of them off, depending on whatever I do there. Now, if I have some on and some off, it's just going to show you that, and it'll just do the rest, as you can see there. So very simple to be able to do that. Now, even if somebody opts into SMS, as I showed you previously, if this is off, they're not going to receive notifications here because you've told the system, don't send any SMS messages about certifications. All right, so just be aware that they can't override the system setting and enable something that you have disabled. All right, so that's how that would work there. And probably a good idea to go through and review these things. Many times what happens is as we go through and we add new features to the system, and maybe there's a new section that gets added to track something new, we may not enable the notifications by default just because, we don't want you to suddenly get a ton of notification about something you don't really know what it is. And so it might be off by default. Or maybe the only thing we enable is self-service because that's a little easier, little less spammy than, let's say, if we enabled email, SMS, and mobile. If we suddenly did all that and people are getting 20 emails a day and 20 text messages and 20 mobile notifications, might be kind of annoying to them, and you might get a little pushback from your employees. But if we just do self-service, of course, yes, it gets a little bit cluttered in here possibly, but it does not go outside of like out to SMS and so forth. So maybe it doesn't cost people text messaging if you're still paying per text and things like that. All right, so you can see all these turned on here. And as you go through, if you want to turn on a whole group of them, again, you can turn them on like that. So if you do see a mixture or something, you could do that. So it's a good idea to review these from time to time, just to make sure you're sending out to your employees, or you'll see here, candidates, the appropriate notifications to the appropriate, destination. So if you want like this applicant, application confirmation thing sent out to those candidates, you can turn that on, like this. Now, this one is one that I believe this one goes internal, but this would also go for candidates. So you would want to make sure that they're turned on for any candidate ones that you're sending out. If you're saying, hey, they're not getting the notifications when they apply, well, double check that they're here, turned on in this one. And like I said, unfortunately, there are a lot of them sometimes. And so you have to go through and read them all. All right. And as I mentioned here, of course, you could do this per employer and you can search. So if you know it has something to do with candidates, I could say, candidate, start typing it. And all of the ones that talk about candidates are going to show here. And then I could decide what I'm going to do as far as those notifications. All right. So that is a great example of where you do that configuration here. This is one of those things where if you do, use your sandbox environment for this thing, just know that the sandbox is not going to send emails and SMS, or I don't know about push notifications. I actually haven't tested that one myself, but be aware that if you do turn something on, you want to test it on in the sandbox, it will not send out to email. Even if you turn it on, it won't send it out to email. So you can turn it on here and show it in self-service, but it doesn't go out into the sandbox. And we do that so we don't like confusing employees that some weird notifications coming through and then they go to self-service and they don't see it. So they won't go out in the sandbox. And of course, if you do make some changes, whatever you did, make sure you hit update down here at the bottom to save. All right, there's a good indicator when you do save. You may have noticed a little red flag went away when I made that change. All right, when I hit update. Okay, so those are the notifications and enabling or possibly disabling those. All right, so here is the notification layouts. Now these, again, are by employer. We're not showing the groups here like we are in the notifications, but you'll see here I can still look at it by group. So if you want to just look at the learning notifications, or actually, I was looking at those certification ones, let's just talk about certification ones. I can do that here. So you can still get down to just that specific group if you need to by doing this here. And then you'll notice here, we can again go to custom or default. Now, not everyone has the ability to add a custom notification within this. Custom I'll talk about this, are only for certain sections. And so you will, if I put in, custom here, there's not going to be any in certifications, but what it's doing is looking at this type. So if you make a custom one for a form, which I'll talk about, you could just look at those custom ones. And again, what you'll see here is this status. So if it's inactive because it's turned off, you can toggle that right there. All right, let's go to certifications. And I'm just going to click on one here. Now you'll notice here we've got like 2 different ones for expiration and 2 different ones for overdue, one for the employee and one for the manager. And so when I click on this, you're going to see the layout here. Now, there is a default layout that we create for all clients. And, you that's going to be there. If you've never touched these before, the default is what you already are seeing when you get these notifications. And if let's say you go through here and you update this and you realize that, you don't like what you're seeing there. So here you'll see the body of this notification down here at the bottom. If you go in here and you go, let's just accidentally delete everything and I start typing and now everything's all messed up, I can revert to the default. All right, so that'll bring back that original one. There's no way to like save a version of what you've done as like, here's my first version, second version, or whatever. So just be aware, if you do revert to default and you save, you're going to lose any edits that you had made in the past. All right, so that goes for that. Actually, I did see there's a question out here. Before I go on, I want to talk real quick about, because I mentioned the recruiting notifications. We do a little bit differently with candidate phone numbers. We don't send a verification to them. What happens is if they have a phone number on file and you go into their candidate, you're going to see a tab that says email and you're going to see another one that says SMS. We're going to just use that mobile phone number that they have on file. There's no choice for like other numbers. They either have a home phone or a mobile, and we'll send to that one there. They don't have to put in the code like you do with an employee. So hopefully that helps to answer that question there. All right, back to editing this. So let's talk about how we do this. So first off, you'll see there's 4 different types for this. Now, not everything has 4 types. All right, and of course, this will matter if you turned on or off different things here. You'll want to make sure that you have the corresponding type, the way you want it to do it. So if I go into this certification one and I only want email to go out, there's no reason I would need to go in and edit these. All right, so you don't necessarily have to touch these here. But if I have all 4 of these enabled and I edit, let's say the email one, I probably want to go and edit the SMS and the ESS and so forth to kind of match up with that same format. All right, so that's how that could work there. But let's look at email first. This one has the most settings because email's just got more fields than the others do. So first off is, where is it coming from? All right, by default, it is this one here, no reply criterionhcm.com. This goes nowhere as far as if somebody does reply to it. We don't monitor this box or anything like that. So if you do want to have, maybe you've got like an HR@yourcompany.com, and if somebody gets an email, they might reply and say, oh, how do I get this renewed? And somebody wants to monitor that. You want to change this email to that HR@yourcompany.com. So you go, HR@yourcompany.com. Now you'll see here a verify button pops up. So what we're doing is verifying that you own that email box. We're not just going to send an email to random email address here without a verification. So unfortunately, you can't send emails to your enemy by putting that number in here unless you have access to their email box. So what you do, if you hit this verify button, it sends an email to this email address. You click a link and it verifies it. And once it's verified, it has that green check mark that you saw before because it's verified. So the only one that we actually have in there is our own, that no reply at criterionhcm.com. We own that one, and we've automatically verified all those. So if you do have something like this, you'll want to replace this and at least verify it once. Even if it's going to be like a junk box, typically IT will be able to like check that even if you don't have access to it. If you have like a no reply at yourcompany.com, usually if you reach out to IT and say, look, I need to verify this email address, we're not going to send anything there normally, but I just need to verify it's correct, we can do that. Now, the other thing is you could reach out to support, and we do have a way that we can flag this, that it is verified. So just be aware that if there's a true junk that you can't access, IT can't access, whatever, we can help you out with that. Again, reach out to support. All right, attachments. So perhaps you want to send some type of attachment with your email notification here. So here you just find that attachment here. You just click the little, paperclip right there, and you go out and you find whatever that attachment is that you want to send. All right. And if I do, I got to verify email. Let me just cancel out here. So I can do this here. I want to show you I can add multiple. And since I don't know the email address, I can't do that. But where'd my email? Here it is, AFC Richmond. All right. And now I want to upload it. There it is. And I can add others. All right, so this means this one would be attached, and maybe there's a second one that I want to be attached. I'll just add this one. All right, so now these two things would be attached to the email that goes out with this. All right, if I no longer want to send this one out, trash can it. You know, those types of things right there. So super easy to do that. So if you want to add more than one attachment, you can add as many as you like. Just make sure you hit the little plus button to upload it. So just because I had that populated doesn't mean it's going to actually use that. So if I just kind of left it right here, it's not attached. You need to hit the little plus. All right, so that's this right here, adding attachments if you need to. Here's the subject line. Now, this is where we have different tokens that you can use. Now, these, of course, do depend on what kind of notification is getting sent out. As an example, this is a certification notification, and I want the certificate name to go on here. So if I did like benefit name, it's not going to work because it's not related to benefits. The system wouldn't know what to do here. Or if I did like a time off type or something, it doesn't know. So it needs to be related to the certification out here. All right, let me just kind of show you some of these tokens here. I don't know if they're all in the help, but as I go down here, yes, you'll see notification layout tokens. I think this is going to take me over there. Let's just see here real quick. I do need to, sometimes I don't log in very frequently into the help on mine, so I just wanted to go there real quick. So here you can see it is broken out by group and which ones you can use in here. All right, so as I mentioned, like you can't use something with compensation distribution up here in certification. So make sure when you're looking at, that particular notification, you know what tokens you can use. All right, so you can see how that kind of works there. And you might want to say your, oops, I don't know why I did a question mark there. Sorry about that. Your certificate name expires on expiry date. All right, so that's an example of my customizing that. And then as I come down here, here's the actual message that's going to go out. Now, this is just rich text or HTML. So you can do whatever you like as far as this is concerned. You'll notice like different fonts and so forth. I could go through and change those and put in whatever I like. But I've got, tokens, employer name. So this would be, AFC Richmond as an example. Certificate name, first aid certificate expires on October 1st or whatever. And it would say, hi, Steve, your certificate, again, whatever, expires on October 1st. Please obtain and upload a new certificate by the expiration date, right? And of course, you may want to change the text in here. You can do whatever you like. You can come down here and by the date indicated or something like that, all right? So you can easily change that text. As I mentioned, if you do go through and, put in a bunch of text and you go, man, I really shouldn't have done that, you can always hit revert to default and it will set this back to what it was. All right, so very easy to do that there. And of course, as I mentioned, you can, maybe I want to make this bold or something like that. Boom, very easy to do that. So you can make things bold or whatever you need to do. All right, let's look at SMS. Now, SMS is a little different. We are limited to the number of characters, so we usually shorten them up. So this is a text message. So it's just going to say like first aid certificate expires on expiration date. Now you might want to say as you can see here, it does tell you the length, so you're okay. Your expiration date, please update on mobile or ESS. So something like that, all right? ESS one, that's what shows here. All right, again, you don't want to have a huge, you could put a long one here, but as you can see, you don't have a huge amount of space. So it doesn't need to be as brief as a text message, but I usually tell people to consider it like a text message. You don't want to have, a huge, 7-paragraph message in there because first off, it's just going to be in this little area, maybe difficult to read. And, you're already going to probably send them an email, maybe. So you don't need to be super long, but maybe what you do is you say, I'm going to send the exact same thing from here into here. All right. And here I do have, those controls for the text, so I can make it bold and stuff. It will show in bold or whatever you do over here. So just be aware of that. If you come in here and you're just messing around and you say, oh, I want to make this huge, that's going to look really weird when you get over to here. All right. So just be aware of that as you go through and do that. And then push notifications. This is kind of like a mixture of email and SMS. I'm sure we've all seen notifications on your phone where you've got, kind of the subject and the body. So again, you're kind of limited. You don't want to have a huge paragraph. People usually want, small notifications. So you may want to just, kind of use the same message that you're using in your SMS. So just be aware, this is what's going to show up on their phone. Of course, you could have 4 different messages out here. You might want to say, your certificate expires on, like this. Please update in Criterion Go. I don't know, whatever you want to say right there. All right, so very simple to be able to edit these. Let me just tone this down because if I get this notification, I might kind of wonder what I was doing. All right, and here you can see they're all saved. Whatever changes I've made are good, and I can go ahead and save this. All right, let's look at custom ones here real quick, and we'll talk about this. So when we do a custom one, they are available in these 4 different areas: forms, performance reviews, publishing, and recruiting. So this is where you may want to have a custom notification for a specific form or performance review or something like that. Recruiting, you want to have templates you're sending out to your candidates. So that's what these are for here. So you'll see these out here as you do this. Now, this is very similar in the way that it works as far as, the layout and everything like that, as you saw, before. But here, when I do like the layout, it depends on what I'm doing. So the form, I have workflow, document approval, notify initiator, notify performers, reject. When I do performance review, notify the manager, reviewer with the deadline, publish, recruiting, candidate email. This one, you don't have an option because it's just emails to go to candidates. And then publishing, document is received by email or self-service is when you publish documents. So you can tie to a specific report. Maybe when the ACA one is out there, you may want to have, here's what's going to go to their email. And so I go to ACA email, right? I'll just call it that. From, and again, I'd have to do that, like no reply, Criterion HCM or whatever. Why is it? Okay, verifying that email address. Attachments as necessary, just like before, the subject line and the body of the email. So the subject line and the body, exactly the same as you would do this. These are only email notifications. Does not send out to SMS or text messaging or mobile, but it allows you to then say, I don't want to use the standard for these things. I want to use a custom layout here. So there might be like a form. You send over an I-9 form for them to fill out, and you want to tie it to that I-9 form. You could go out there, find form I-9, and have a specific notification about the I-9, because you want to say, this form is due in 3 days or something like that. And so you may want to have a specific email that goes out about this particular form that is sent over to the employee or the person who's going to be approving it. All right, so just so you can see how that works there. So otherwise, it is very much the same as when I'm doing one of the standard ones, in that I have the body of the email, I have the subject line, and I can add attachments. So this part is the same. It's just that you can say there's specific areas where it is used. All right, and then of course, if I go over to forms, that's where that custom one could look like. Here you go. I got form, notify performer. And so here's an example of that. Hello at first name. So hello, Steve. The I-9 form is ready for your approval. Please verify the documentation and submit to E-Verify. And, very simple right there. Maybe I want to, change the verbiage or whatever. It's just like any other email notification, and that I have all this stuff here. Yeah, so you can see exactly how that works with custom ones for forms. And of course, it would work the same thing. I don't know if I have any recruiting ones. Let me just go and see real quick. See if I have any custom ones. I don't. Let me do a quick one here before we wrap up. I'll just say sample email, and this is just going to be in recruiting, candidate email, HR at, okay, I don't have that email address, so don't send me anything. Hello, candidate. And then I might say, hello at first name. Thank you for your interest in this position. Whatever I want my message to be, I can put that in here. This will, of course, put their first name in there. And there are tokens for positions which you can reference when you go to the notification layouts. tokens, which is right here. So I go down to recruiting. You'll see here, we've got @job. So you could use that there in this @job position. All right, so very simple to do that. I haven't verified my email, so I can't save it, but that's just an example of how that would work. All right, so that is quickly notification layouts, and of course, where you see them over here. So hopefully that helped to answer those questions. I know today we had quite a bit of questions coming through the Q&A, so I do want to thank you on that. I do want to, of course, mention because I was out here on the Help Center, we encourage you to go to the community and participate, especially feature requests, but even tips and tricks if you want to see those types of things. When you go over here, you'll see there are, of course, going to be some notification ones out here. Maybe you say, hey, it'd be great to have custom notifications in certifications. I don't know. Maybe you want that over there. So you might want to put that out here as a recommendation, or maybe there's some tokens that you think would be very useful. And you could, put that out there as a thing, or just read what other people are saying and what they've recommended. And we do take these things seriously. We add them into the product. And you'll see here in a few weeks when we have our new version out, which is coming out in about 3 weeks or 4 weeks next month, we will have a number of the things we pulled off of this and are now going to be in the system. So let's go ahead and wrap up with our agenda for the next couple of sessions here. So you should be able to see the upcoming webinars out here. I haven't put the year-end things out here just because it's so early. It feels weird to put down year-end stuff and it's still September. But that's what's going to be happening later on after the recruiting stuff. I just, to me, it's a little weird to talk about year-end payroll stuff and it's still September. So by the October 9th, you're going to see the year-end things are going to be out there. So our upcoming learning series webinars, we have recruiting. We're going to talk about open positions in a couple of weeks on October 9th. And then we will discuss candidates. So the two sides of the recruiting, the positions and the candidates. Of course, notifications are things that go to candidates. So we'll talk about those over the next month. And then we're going to get into our year-end topics and everything. So those people who are payroll oriented may want to be interested in that. We do it for the US and Canada. So we don't ignore our US friends when we're doing our year-end here. So please go ahead and attend these if you're interested in recruiting. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out to us at help@criterionhcm.com. And that will go to your customer success manager. They'll be able to help you out there. Of course, if you're working with a partner, that is your first point of contact. So reach out to them with any questions about notifications or anything else. If there's anything we didn't get to today, feel free to email us about that. We're happy to answer your questions. And I do want to thank you all for joining us, and I hope to see you all again in a couple of weeks. Thanks again.